You know, it's pretty easy to take something like freedom for granted. But what happens when it's not a given? What if it's something you have to fight for every single day? Well, in Iran, that's the reality. And in this explainer, we're going to dig deep into the protests that are shaking that nation and the incredibly complex response from the rest of the world.
Okay, so here's our roadmap. First, we'll set the scene by looking at this massive clash between freedom and repression. Then we'll get into the truly courageous acts of defiance that have come out of it. After that, we have to ask a tough question about global solidarity, or the lack of it. We'll then zoom in on Australia as a kind of case study before wrapping up with a look at what this all tells us about just how fragile freedom can be for all of us.
All right, first things first, freedom versus repression. To really get what's happening, you have to understand that we're talking about two completely different realities. On one hand, you have the kind of freedom that many of us just assume is normal. And on the other, you have the suffocating control that is just daily life for millions in Iran.
And this slide really puts it in black and white, doesn't it? I mean, on one side, you've got the basic right to speak your mind, believe what you want, and even disagree with your government. But on the other side, a system built on control. Control over what you say, what you wear, and even who you are. This isn't just about a few inconvenient laws. It's a world where your clothes or your words can literally make you an enemy of the state.
Yeah, and this goes way beyond just a few rules. The source material calls it systemic repression. Think about that. It's a constant, crushing pressure where every part of your life is policed. One wrong word, one social media post that someone doesn't like, and that could be it. You could be facing prison or even worse.
But here's the thing about that kind of pressure. It creates diamonds. Out of all this repression, we're seeing these incredible acts of defiance. And this isn't just some abstract political movement. This is a story about real people risking absolutely everything and pushing back with a kind of courage that is just breathtaking. We're seeing it on a huge scale, right? Thousands of people protesting all over the world. But it's also in these incredibly personal, powerful moments. Women in Iran, in public, tearing off their hijabs, a massive act of defiance. And as the source points out, right there in Australia, on the Gold Coast, Iran's own women's soccer team just stood silent. They refused to sing their national anthem, a quiet protest that was louder than any shout.
So how did the regime react? Well, it was exactly as brutal as you'd expect. There was zero room for interpretation. Iranian state TV didn't just disagree with them, they immediately branded them as wartime traitors. Think about that. Their silent, peaceful protest was instantly framed as an act of treason. And let's be really clear about the stakes here. This wasn't just some symbolic gesture for a news cycle. For not singing a song, these women knowingly put their entire lives on the line. When they go home, they could be facing decades in prison, or even the death penalty. That's what they risked.
So when you see that level of courage, it just forces you to ask a really uncomfortable question. And it's a question that sits at the absolute heart of this whole analysis. Where is everyone else? I mean, seriously, this is without a doubt one of the most important fights for freedom happening on the planet right now. So where's the matching outcry? I'm not talking about a few headlines that disappear the next day. I'm talking about a sustained, visible, and completely unapologetic show of solidarity with the people of Iran. Where is it?
And this really isn't about your typical left versus right politics. This is way more fundamental. You could say it's the ultimate test of our values. Do we, in the West, actually believe that freedom is a universal right that's worth defending everywhere? Or is it just a nice idea we like to talk about when it's easy and convenient?
Now, to see how this whole question of solidarity actually plays out in the real world, the source material zooms right in on one country, Australia. It looks at what some of its political figures are saying and doing.
And what it finds are these perceived contradictions. For example, it asks why the Greens Party, which is very outspoken on other international issues, seems to have less urgency when it comes to Iran. It looks at a government minister who just flat out says the Iranian athletes will get no preferential treatment and contrasts that bluntness with the much more delicate way the government handles bringing home Australian families from former ISIS territory. And it even asks, why are public memorials being held for an Iranian leader who's seen as an architect of this very repression? The central idea here is this apparent inconsistency from a country that says it champions freedom.
And this brings us to the final part, where the whole discussion kind of turns into a mirror. The suggestion is that this isn't just a story about a country far away, it's actually a reflection of our own understanding, or maybe our misunderstanding of what freedom is even worth.
And to back this up, the source points to a number from Australian polling, and honestly, it's pretty startling.
Just 43%. That's it. Fewer than half of young Australians between 18 and 24 believe that democracy is always the best way to govern.
Look at it this way. That means a clear majority of young people are either not sure about democracy or just plain unconvinced it's the best system we've got. And that is a really sobering thought, right? Especially when you see people in Iran risking their actual lives for the very freedoms that democracy is supposed to guarantee.
And that really gets to the core warning here. Democracy is not a default setting. As Shadow Minister Andrew Hastie is quoted as saying, it's a long-term cultural project that can be easily destroyed. It's fragile. You have to actively fight to keep it.
So we're left with this final, really challenging question. What's the real test of our belief in freedom? Is it just the things we say when we're safe and comfortable? Or is it measured by what we're willing to do, what we're willing to defend, when other people are putting their lives on the line for those exact same principles?